Welcome to the Blind Apex Podcast, where amateur club racers tune in to get faster.
I'm your host, Con John Turk, and on this episode of the Blind Apex Podcast, we're talking about circle track racing. Specifically, what skills translate from circle track racing into road racing. Joining me, returning guest, future Baja 1000 racer, someone who's raced in some way, in some manner in all 50 states. Fresh off his trip to the 24-hour of Daytona, Jasper, welcome back to the show, man.
Oh, I'm excited to be here again.
Yeah, so the last time we talked about your 10th gen Civic, has that car sold? I saw that it was up for sale.
It is not for sold. I might be a little optimistic on the sale price, but it's, you have these cars and sometimes you put them up for sale for a price that you'll let it go for, but you're not really trying that hard to get rid of it. And it is driving so nice right now that I'm happy with it and I don't need to sell it, but it's definitely for sale.
I understand where you're coming from. Yeah. So if anybody's interested, we will definitely get people to get in touch with you. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from. The car's driving nice and it's sort of extra, but you kind of want to keep it, but you don't really need to keep it. So
it's one of those things where I need to sell a few cars and I don't care if the other ones sell first, type deal. That in my M3, I'm just really happy with at the moment. Everything else, I could part with ways a little bit easier.
Yeah, so that's interesting that you really enjoy your Civic and your M3. It's sort of like the race cars or the track cars that everybody gravitates towards. But yeah. So let's talk about, I saw you were at the 24 hours of Daytona. How was that trip?
That was great. So I didn't plan to go to the 24 hours of Daytona, but my daughter was off from college and she made the comment that she really wanted to go there someday. So I called up my buddies at Michelin Tire and I said, I'm available. I'll come down and work for you. So they put me to work. They cover all my expenses and put us up in a hotel. And so while Dad had to work a 12-hour shift mounting tires and being a Michelin tire technician, she got to enjoy the track and see all the sights and sounds. And then, of course, we went and we checked out the movie car. They're filming the movie Apex. And so we tried to make ourselves as extras in the background as often as possible. But at the 24 hours this year, it was so star-studded with drivers and owners from all different disciplines. You couldn't walk 10 feet without seeing a celebrity or, just being a total fanboy over everyone. And of course, my daughter, being a huge race fan, was all over the Iron Dames and all of the other storylines. And, she was in line to meet Bubba Wallace and we got our picture taken with Hunter Ray. And it was unbelievable. It was like no other 24-hour race I'd been to.
That's awesome. I really want to go to the 24 hours of Daytona. I haven't been yet. It's on my list and my wife's list, so we're going to have to get there soon. I got a bunch of folks, they work on different race teams and they're always like, yeah, you need to be there. You need to be there. Was it you that got your hand slapped for posting pictures of a certain vehicle?
So yeah, I took some pictures of the new Aston Martin and it was wrapped in a camel zebra wrap, just how they test cars on the roads, so that if you take a picture, you can't really tell the body lines. And so, of course, I went up to it, took pictures. My daughter and I both took turns sitting in it. Oh my goodness, the fit and finish of that car is so above and beyond anything I've driven. The whole foot box slides instead of the seat. The steering column telescopes and moves towards you. It's just a beautiful machine, and they have a bunch of updates. And for IMSA, you're not allowed to race a car that isn't readily available to anybody in that series, in the GS. So this car has some updates, and it's not quite completely legal. And IMSA, of course, let it race in the day before in the smaller with the TCR cars in the Honda Pilot or the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series. And they were basically told, if you podium, you're going to be disqualified. There were some other Astons that were proper, and they're letting him do it as testing, and that's happened with other race series. I know when I ran Pirelli World Challenge, they were testing cars that weren't completely legal yet, with the understanding of, if you win, we're probably going to dock you or just make sure you don't win type scenarios. And yes, I could have said no and not taken the photos down, and I did make a nice little TikTok about it. But because I am personally friends with people on the team, I didn't want to get those people in trouble.
Right.
So that's why I went ahead and I took everything down. I have a very dear friend who works for Pratt Miller, and he sometimes shares photos that he shouldn't. And there was a time where he got a very stern talking to. They were testing down in Sebring. And at Sebring, you've got Hotel 7 right there. So anybody staying at the hotel can see whatever's on track. He didn't post the photo, but it was only a degree of separation to the person that did. And, he got reprimanded.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is, looking back at it, that car got so much more publicity because of the funky wrap and all of the people taking pictures than it would have if it was just a normal backmarker Aston Martin like it ended up being. So it's funny. I mean, their marketing people know what they're doing. They know it caused buzz. I know I looked at the analytics on my social media, and that picture outdid anything I've ever posted ever on my Drengler racing page. So it's kind of funny. You're welcome, Aston. You got some free marketing, and I took it down. So
yeah, any publicity is good publicity, right? So there.
Yeah, and it was enjoyable watching people argue about what it was or wasn't. And I, of course, didn't want to comment more than I already had for the sake of my buddy, because I knew exactly what the car was. Right. I wasn't going to go that far and say it. And yeah, and then multiple crew members jumped on the argument, and it was entertaining. It was pretty civil for some car guys, but wow, did they have some passion about that car?
Yeah. Well, hopefully they can work out some of the kinks and it can stop being a back marker, because, nobody wants to be in the back.
Well, and when you're doing sports car racing, you've got gentleman drivers. And so they had two pretty decent hot shoes on that team. And then they had a very nice gentleman that paid his entry fee and helped fund the weekend. And he could use some more seat time.
Yeah, that's not every gentleman driver. That's disrespectful to gentleman drivers in general. But the gentleman drivers have a varying amount of skill and time in the seat, right? It's just how it is. You don't know what you're going to get. They could have 1,000,000 hours in a Miata, but when you strap into the Aston at Daytona, they could have 1,000,000 hours in a Miata at, some podunk little track somewhere. But when you strap into an Aston and are on banking and ripping, over 140, 150 miles an hour, things get a little shaky, right? So they need to.
And it does. And this gentleman had good car control. He never put the car in a bad situation. He never overdrove his ability. I mean, he was a gentleman driver in every sense of the word. He was good. We see, and I don't mind it. I love the fact that it's accessible to people that can write a check. But what I don't like is in past years where you have a gentleman driver who is driving beyond his ability and takes out very expensive machinery.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as long as they're not tearing stuff up, the team should be planning around those drivers, right? I mean, that's how they generally do it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. But all right. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed Daytona. Sounded exciting. There was a lot of buzz. Like you said, there was tons of celebrities and racers from every discipline, most likely. Probably the only racers that weren't in Daytona were the people going out for Kings of Hammer, because they were all transporting. At least the East Coast guys were transporting. They were already en route to the Kings of Hammer. So anyway, yes, I look at lots of different types of racing. I can't help it. Anything with wheels, I like to race it.
The King of Hammers is on my list to go check out. It absolutely is.
So we have a local team, local shop that put together a team. They purchased a truck. Oh, wow. Maybe 4 months ago. And in those 4 months, they've done 3 rounds of testing. And last week they headed out for the race. So hopefully they do well. They're going to learn a lot of lessons. They already have. They had to swap a transfer case after practice. So
yeah, and we're working on putting together our spares list, and I'm going to go enter 2 off-road races with this vehicle before we head out to Baja in November. So that's what's going to be a lot of my summer.
Which
vehicle? Is the learning. I bought a Polaris Razor 1000 race ready side by side. I would love. I did test drive a little trophy truck light. I enjoyed it. I just didn't feel that team that I test drove with was it was what I could afford. It wasn't going to be in contention for anything. And if I was going to spend that much money, I would just be annoyed with the end result. So I thought if I step it down a couple classes and race something that I can easily afford, I could have a little bit more of an enjoyable experience. So it's like anything, racing within your means, and it's more fun. I've had a lot of fun racing World Outlaws and some high dollar cars, but I tell you what, I get into these little Hondas or little Chevy Cavaliers and I go tear around in them. And when you're not doing the dollar signs about what it's going to cost to fix if you go off track, it makes for a much more enjoyable weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good transition. So when you did your circle track stuff, were you driving those little Chevy Cavaliers and Honda Civics that are in those classes?
Yeah, I was one of the first people to drive one of the new body style Cavaliers back in 2005, 2004, 2003, and it was great, and it taught me a lot. And I think one of the biggest things that going and racing in a little circle is that'll teach a driver is you don't have any mirrors, you don't have any radios, so you have to not only have a very good sense of where your car is, but it teaches you to pay attention to where the other cars around you are. You get, even when I was in the dirt late model and it's loud and it's straight headers, you got really good at feeling where other cars were before you got really out of shape, and you got really good at hearing a different tone. Even with the receivers and earplugs, you can hear when the other cars are coming around you. And getting used to racing without mirrors and not having a spotter in your ear. I go to some of these road racings and some of these young guys are racing with a full comms, and it drives me nuts when I've got someone talking in my ear too much. And, you get spooked by the mirror. And, when we go race, like with your Civic and with my Civic, we're racing with the mirrors. We're trying to give people space. But on the dirt track, you don't have any of that. You find that car by touching it.
Yeah. So the guy that helps me with my car, Jason, he's a huge circle track guy. He's basically taught me everything I know. I wish I would have invited him on because he'd probably had a lot more questions than I've been able to prepare, or at least a lot more insight. But one of the things he's always brought up is that no mirrors thing. And it doesn't matter whether you're in the Cavaliers or you're in a full blown like sprint car or late model, the quarter midgets, it doesn't matter what you're on. There's no mirrors on these cars. None. Not even little circle mirrors on the inside. It's not allowed. So awareness is a huge thing that you will have to learn. And you will have to learn, like you said, listening for things. For me, the local circle track that we have, just sitting in the stands, I'll have my muffs on, and earplugs in underneath them. You can feel another car. You can feel them. The air feels different when there's 2 cars coming around versus 1 car qualifying to the race. Totally different feel in the air. So yeah, that's a huge thing. Yeah.
And what I would do when I'd go to a new track, a new dirt track that I've never been to, is first off, I'll watch tape, try to watch tape before I get out there to see where the
Right.
line is. And I'll watch all the other classes during the night. And I like to make a conscious effort to run the high side all the way on a track for the first few laps because I can have a better sense of the car coming up on my inside. I would much rather someone comes up and I feel them than pinch someone off on an outside up against the concrete. And I feel like my driving style, I have more control over height, protecting the high side than the bottom. And there's a lot of tracks the bottom's fast. There's a lot of tracks the top's fast. But my driving style overall is I like a loose car. I like to be up by the berm. And um, there was a race I was at this last year where I went to the high side and I was leading the race for a long time. And this little 12-year-old girl pulled up next to me on the bottom. And I thought, that works better. And the next lap, I crossed over and passed her. And it was not a big deal. But the reading of the track and the being able to tell how the surface changes over the course of the race and how you have to control your throttle all race long, how you have to find a different groove and play around with it on the dirt really, really crosses over to road racing more than anybody would think, especially if the track gets wet or if someone throws some gravel up onto the track. I believe it teaches you more diversity versus it's not just a constant repetitive same lap time, same entry every single lap
So
of the
when
race.
you're talking circle track and your circle track experience, you're talking have you done asphalt? Because I'm assuming you're talking dirt only.
I've raced on a lot of asphalt and dirt tracks. An asphalt track, you're going to have mirrors. Some are going to have comms.
Okay.
But I think a lot of the car control skills I honed basically racing on dirt and ice, and living up here where we have icy roads for 2 months out of the year definitely helps.
Yeah. When I see like the quarter midget guys go out or the late model guys go out, at least locally to me, they are 100% comfortable with putting a lot of slip angle in their car. And it's the only way I think they can straighten out and rock it down the straightaways, and that's a skill or comfort level that I don't think I have with my car. I better get it because I loosened
There's
it up.
a steep learning. Yeah, there's a steep learning curve, and I'm glad you loosened your car up because it looked a little tight. But there's no other feeling of all the racing I've ever done. The two craziest feelings in a race car are when you're in a dirt late model where the rear end pivots and you come out of the corner and the car hikes up and it goes where it wants. The second most amazing feeling ever in a car that nobody believes until they experience it is to take you can take a large V8 rear wheel drive car, or you can take a little 4-cylinder front wheel drive car running studded tires on ice. You will never experience so much grip in your life. When you hit the gas, the car moves. When you hit the brakes, it stops on a dime. And when you turn the steering wheel, it reacts immediately. I don't care. I've run Pirelli slicks, Hoosier slicks, Michelin slicks. Nothing connects you to the surface as tight as a good set of studded tires on ice. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I was actually listening to the Lizard Brain podcast with Tom O'Gorman and DJ Alessandrini. I think it was sometime last year, so almost a whole year ago, they were talking about ice racing and getting into it and just talking about it. Tom O'Gorman said, you don't even really have to use your brakes because once you hit them, they will slow you too far down and you need more momentum to keep going. I think that was specifically for the for the snow tire class, not the studded tire class. But yeah, I can only imagine because that's grip. That's super grip, right? Studs in ice.
Yeah, it's a great time. So our local lake, we would run studded classes and non-studded classes, and there's a very good comparison to the guys that go out and race the non-studded ice racing. the guys that do that all winter long and then go to the dirt track, they're always fastest out of the box because they haven't lost that muscle memory. They have that driving with an egg between your foot and the accelerator pedal. They just have that extra bit of skill. And we all get rusty over the off season. No matter how much you sim or do anything, your first time on track, that's where you're going to find the rusty driver, the loose bolt, that one part you didn't check on the car that first night out.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked a little bit about adjusting to track conditions. So can we dig into that a little bit? What changes in a dirt track? And then we'll talk about how that applies to the road courses that we're out on.
So the dirt track, depending on the type of preparation that the crew does, could change drastically over the course of a night. The track will start out typically with a little bit of tack, and a tacky dirt track will take a ton of motor to get around it, and the suspension setup isn't so particular. So the biggest motor wins on a tacky, grippy, sticky dirt track. As the night goes on, there'll start to be a groove that gets dry. And depending on which tire compounds are being raced with that club or that organization, it depends on how dry slick the track gets. So it'll actually turn black and it'll start taking rubber. And that rubber will have grip for a little bit. And then it'll turn into dry slick, where it actually have a glossy finish to it that you can see. Sometimes you can see it on the TV. Sometimes you can see it in person. When I was racing dirt track, I used to wear a yellow visor, and that would help me distinguish the dirt on the track. You could actually see where there was more moisture and where it was dry slick. And when the track would go slick from the top to the bottom, you would want to do one of two things. You would either want to plant your right side tires up on that berm and find some grip there, or you want to hug the bottom by the tires or cones or whatever that track uses. And I remember one of my first dirt street stock wins, my crew chief came up to me and he says, whoever holds the bottom is going to win this race. I was starting up front on the pole, and I listened to him and I held it down there. And the whole race, multiple drivers took turns bouncing off my rear bumper, but because I refused to give up that bottom lane, cars would come flying in on the high side, slide up, but they wouldn't be able to rotate in the middle of the corner. And I was lucky enough to get one of my first feature wins that night. And then you can go to the dirt track from one week to another and have a completely different track to work with. If it rained a lot, if there was humidity, an asphalt oval track is going to be very repeatable. Yes, the temperature is going to change and the drivers are going to have to play with tiny, tiny adjustments. But if you go to an asphalt track where guys race every single week, good luck, because those guys their cars are going to be dialed in and they're going to be very repeatable, and they're going to know the tires, they're going to know the surface. And it takes a lot for a new guy to show up to an asphalt track and beat the locals. But you can go to a dirt track, you can be not from the area, and you can pull one out every once in a while, simply because there's so many more variables, and the driver can drive around a bad setup on dirt a lot better than asphalt or road racing.
Okay. That makes sense to me. There's so many conditions that you have to adjust for or not just accommodate your driving style to, that on dirt, just because of the actual makeup of the track. Whereas we race on asphalt, we race on rubbered in, sometimes, most of the time, rubbered in track. So it would feel to us, it feels a lot like we would be more comparable to racing circle track on asphalt. But there are some tracks, Mid-Ohio is the real bad one, where there is a line for weather conditions. And I think one of the biggest things, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm definitely not the professional here, but the biggest translations, because of what you're dealing with on the dirt, is that when you go onto a road course, the slicker the conditions, the more apt you're going to have the skills to negotiate that track.
Absolutely. And yeah, Mid Ohio, I raced Mid Ohio in the snow once upon a time, and that was a very long day. Um, but finding the rain line, I've been at many tracks where I want to get in the car when
Mhm.
it's raining, but you see a couple different drivers. You see the driver that finds the wet line and then doesn't ever experiment as the
Right.
track dries or gets wetter. And then you find the guy that has no clue what a wet line is and tries to stay in the dry the whole time. And I think that's when you have a habit of constantly testing the track and not being content with your line. I think, especially on a wet track, that helps a lot. Um, Nelson Ledges, we had a long rain race there once, and I loved racing in the rain. I would go drive that track in the wet anytime. Don't go on the grass because then you're going to eat tires. But um, I love racing in the rain in a road course. I remember Road Atlanta one night. I was in a Honda Fit and it was wet for qualifying, and I found myself on the second row in my group, and there's a Corvette and a Porsche and a whole bunch of really fancy cars next to me when we gridded up. And I talked to everybody around me. I said, when the track turns green, I'm going to be driver's left, and you can all pass me going into one because I have zero chance of keeping up with you guys in the dry. Um, so that's fun. The other thing that I think driving on an oval track, whether it's dirt or
Mhm.
asphalt, as a driver, you're going to be used to floating a car up to a concrete wall. So, like, one of my favorite road courses is the Ozarks. And along the front stretch there's a concrete wall that separates the pits from the front stretch there, the main stretch coming down to the flag stand. And when we went there for our champ car race, there were drivers that were scared of it. They and the fast way I found across the front stretch was right up next to the wall. Um, and so when you're used to doing ovals, you're used to floating a car up to the concrete. You don't have that fear of maybe touching it, but getting right up there. The only other thing comparable is probably turn one at Sebring, where guys will put the driver's side mirror on the wall, but that's to the inside. That's not floating a car slightly out of control and walking up the track. I think um, guys that do a lot of oval track can relate and be a little bit less scared of like the front stretch at Ozarks.
Yeah, where you can put your car and how close you can get to stuff. Um, there's only certain tracks that road courses that allow you to practice that. Whereas at the circle track, especially if you're running the high side, it's always there, right? Or the low side. I mean, I've seen guys accidentally, especially in the super late models, like their nose will be a little pointy out in the front, and they'll snag the corner with the inside tires down there. But that's definitely something.
Yeah,
Um,
those tires are
no,
not forgiving.
no, somehow they soak up a crash, but they don't soak up the body panels too good. If you just rub the body panel, they sort of like grab it. It's weird.
Yeah, I would rather bounce off an outside concrete wall than a tire most
Yeah.
days.
So a behavior that you pointed out earlier was that in the dirt track, you're hunting for that line, right? High side, low side, high to low. Am I pinching things off? You're always looking for a way around the track that's going to be faster, right? And I think that behavior, because you were talking about how to navigate the wet and the dry lines at tracks, but that behavior in general, when you're in a road race situation, that's how you pull off your passes, right? You never get to pass on the optimal line. So once you execute your pass, you now have to figure out, well, I'm not in the optimal spot anymore. How can I get this car to pull away from this person that I just passed, right? And that's a mentality. And I think hunting for lines at a circle track may help some folks figure that out. Uh, the offline passing and things that we have to do. So,
Yeah, we see some guys in road courses that have amazing racecraft where they will stalk someone. They'll be right on their bumper. And, as a fan, you're like, well, why doesn't he just pass them? And part of it is you're trying to learn where you can catch them sleeping, where you can take advantage of them. Or a lot of times you're you're showing the nose in a certain corner lap after lap, getting them used to it so that the next time around or coming down to the white flag, you're going to do something different and try to catch them off guard. So there's a lot of that. And the same goes for especially so in dirt ovals, passes happen a little bit faster, the crossovers, the slide jobs. But in asphalt, you'll see guys doing that for entire races. They'll be taking 20, 30 laps to set up for a last lap pass or that might be a little sketchy of a move, but they're preparing for that. And some of the best road racers I've been on track with, they've done that to me. I know they have a faster car. I know what the line is. I know they can't get around me if I don't screw up, but they'll get in your head. They'll start showing a nose in a place they shouldn't. And if you take your blinders off and get distracted by it, all of a sudden they're showing a nose and popping around you in a corner that you shouldn't be trying. And now they've got you off your game and they're taking the pass.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that I've seen happen on track and then at the circle tracks is lulling people to sleep. So you said taking your blinders off. They literally force you to just look through blinders. And then that's when they're like, well, he will never pass here, right? He only shows his nose into turn 1 or whatever. And so you find another corner and you've already lulled them to sleep. They're like, they'll never try it here. And bam, they pop out and try to make that pass in the less predictably.
Sounds like we're writing a bad script for a racing movie or something,
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot more aggression in the circle track world than I do in the road race world, and maybe it's just my group that I'm with, but those folks that are out there on the circle track, they're very comfortable being close to people, touching people, bumping people, riding up into people. They door each other all the time. So it's a different level of comfort of where their car is and what their car is doing. So.
Yeah, and then when it comes to the road racing side of it, I feel very confident going to any event that my car is going to leave in one piece. But I will tell you, I try to take a look at the drivers in my run group. And if I see that young kid that's been racing go-karts for a while and isn't paying his own bills and doesn't have any fear of putting his smash Miata up against me, I'm going to make a note of that. And if I end up side by side with him, I admit I'm going to give him space because my plastic trophy isn't worth me fixing a door and fender. When these kids they think that every race is for $1 million and they're going to be the next Michael Andretti. So, there's times where I've been really aggressive in a car for certain races. And it's mostly going to be on the oval tracks. And when I get to the road course racing, I'm driving a much more expensive car that doesn't have any body damage, and I'd like to keep it that way. So there's times I'll give a point by to some guys that are just being overly aggressive just because it's not worth it to me. And then there's times, on the oval track, I put my bumper to my own kid, he knows dad's behind him. And I've never let my children win a race in my life. And they know it, but I did. I've put my bumper to my kid one day just to teach him a lesson. He kept chopping the corner and dad had to do what dad had to do.
Good for you. Good for you. There's no participation trophy. I don't know if it's for real or not, but it doesn't seem that way in circle track racing. So,
yeah. I think the real bottom line for any driver on any surface is there's no replacement for seat time. And the more diverse tracks, surfaces, and cars you can get into, the better. And when it comes to dollars per time on the track, you cannot do anything cheaper than a front-wheel drive 4-cylinder car at your local oval track. You can pick up a car for less money than you and I spend on our transmissions, and your entry fee is $20. And you might get $100 when you leave the gate. So, I think guys that want to get into classes like yours or like what I do with my Civic, if they're green and they're nervous and they don't want to make a huge investment, go race at your local little oval track, get some seat time, save some money, and then figure out if you want to step it up to the world of road racing, which is typically a little bit more expensive than the dirt track scene.
So let's talk about that, because I know at least 4 people who want to get into a dirt car locally. How do you do that? I mean, do you just rent them? Do you just buy them? Are there practice days? Like, let's talk about the dirt life a little bit.
If you are a handy, skilled guy and you want to weld your own roll cage in and do all of that, that's great. But I don't recommend doing it for your first car. I did. I was stupid. I would not let my children drive the cars that I built when I was their age, based on how I put it together and how safe I thought it was. And, when I was young and dumb, a roll cage was just something I had to have to get to go race. I didn't think about it the way I look at it now as a mature adult.
Tech.
So, and past tech. Yep. So you could pick up a little race-ready 4-cylinder car for anywhere from $2,500 to $6,800 if you want to, and go to the local track. There are guys that rent them out. I actually just rented an asphalt oval street stock for a track in Connecticut for this May. It's a track I've never been to before, and the guy was advertising that it was for rent, and I think he's charging me like $700 for the night. That includes tires, fuel, and he says he doesn't care about serious body damage, or he doesn't care about minor body damage. And I think that's a steal. And I've rented cars all over the country. If you want to go to the road course, you're not going to find many rentals for less than like $2,500 for a weekend. So the oval stuff can be a lot less expensive. Oval guys are weird about renting cars. They don't understand it as a business. Like us road racers, we're very used to the rental car scene. But if go on your local marketplace, look for cars that are for sale. Go to the track that you want to go check out. See what the driver restrictions are, what safety equipment you need, and don't skip on the safety equipment. I would rather get a slower car for you to learn on and have the best safety gear in the world than some of the cheap crap that passes for PPE out there in our world is just scary. Yes. So, be smart. Don't buy some of the crap I did back in the day. There's plenty of pictures when I was racing those cars in the early 2000s where the requirement was a helmet, long sleeves, long pants. And I have pictures of myself in Victory Lane wearing long sleeve t-shirts, jeans, and an open face helmet. And that wouldn't pass anymore. I mean, when you see my kids going racing, they have all the best gear that money can buy on them, from the Hans to the helmet, the suit. If you're going out there for 20 minutes, a cheaper fiberglass helmet isn't that bad. But if you're doing endurance racing, get the carbon fiber and save your neck. You'll feel it Tuesday when you have to go back to the office if you've been, wearing that lightweight helmet or not. But yeah, it's not out of reach. And then you just race within your means. I've always told people, don't rent a car or don't race a car that you can't afford to leave at the track that day. It might hurt, but race within your means. And I am very guilty of, at times in my life, racing well beyond my means and not being the best with a racing budget.
Yeah. So if we get into this dirt life, so say I troll Facebook Marketplace like I do regularly, I find myself, $1,500 4-cylinder car. Maybe it needs a little work, whatever, everything's shot, but the engine, transmission are good to go. And it's got an actual cage in it, not fence posts bent and welded together. Are there practice days? Do they, or do you just play?
Some tracks will have a practice day. Typically, a lot of asphalt tracks will have practice during the middle of the week, so guys can come break in tires and test stuff. Most dirt tracks are just going to have practice like the week before the season starts. What I've done with some of my kids is we've gone and entered the race, and I will tell the tech official that I want my child to start dead last in the heat race and dead last in the feature. and just ride around. And then I want them black flagged right before the leader catches them, because I don't want them interfering with someone else's race, or I don't want my kid to, their first few races, I don't want them to be in the way or get taken out by someone else. My younger son wrecked up his car pretty good last summer, and the girl that flat out took him out was 16 years old. And so when we see two 16-year-olds crashing on the track, I kind of laughed, and her dad kind of laughed, and it wasn't a big deal. But if it was me, if it was someone my age in that same race taking out a 16-year-old kid, we'd be having a different conversation, right? So don't be afraid to go to the track. Don't be afraid to start last. Don't be afraid to get laughed at. Don't be afraid of the learning curve. And if you want to spend like, I don't know, $6,800, I have a very nice Acura RSX built for the dirt track in my shed ready to go right now.
Yeah, that's a lot of tires for me. But what tires are those 4-cylinders running, by the way? Just some street tire?
So some tracks are allowing them to run Hoosiers and race tires. Some of them, it has to be a DOT tire. Some of them, it has to be a certain sidewall restriction. So before you actually buy any car, any race car, go check out the rules very, very carefully, because in the world of 4-cylinder front-wheel drive racing, there are $1,500 cars and there are $35,000 cars, and they're not even comparable.
Just like that in every class. Every discipline of racing, every class that you could imagine, it's always.
But I don't want to see someone go and buy a car and then get to the track and be told, oh, by the way, VTEC's not allowed here, or you have to tear out all your suspension. Or the worst thing I've ever heard a tech official say, and they said to me, was, you have too many bars in your roll cage, you need to cut those out. And that's when the car goes back in the trailer and I don't come back. So just check the rules carefully. I have actually had really good luck re-grooving some asphalt slicks and running them on dirt, because when you get on that real dry slick track, you're a lot of times running on like wet concrete, or, so I like the really soft tires. Those Continental 200s that we've been endurance racing with, I started taking those to the local track, and now they've got a 400 tread wear rule because Jasper was way too fast. So I like a soft tire on dirt. Don't run brand new tires on dirt. Shave them or get them half used from a tire shop. A brand new tire is going to chunk out. It's not going to stand up to racing. And a lot of asphalt racing, I'd recommend the same thing. Get the new tire shaved. I know some of the tire distributors will send a tire to you pre-shaven. Otherwise, run used tires for the oval stuff. It doesn't matter right off the bat.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to get into how to set up the car, but those are good tips, like what to look for in the car, what to deal with, know what your rules are, because they do change track to track much more in dirt track racing, I think, than road racing in general. So, yeah.
And most promoters and tech officials, if you're showing up and you're finishing mid-pack or in the back and you're new, they're not going to care that much. It's when you show up and you spank the whole field that they start to not liking it if you have a minor rule infraction, right? They're understanding if you're just out there trying to get seat time.
Well, that's good. Seat time is king. Nothing will beat seat time. It was browbeat into me, and now I need to go do it. But like you said, having other experiences in motorsports in general will make you a better, more well-rounded driver. And I think probably the cheapest way to get into something new for most of us is going to be that 4-cylinder dirt track car. So
I would agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. I've been looking at them. I know guys. Well, my buddy Jason used to have one, used to run one, used to work on a team where they had some pretty high dollar ones. So might be worth looking into. My wife might kill me for another race car, but we'll see.
It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. Don't take marriage advice from me ever. I'm not the one to listen to on that.
So, I tried to jot some things down so we could wrap this up. The things that you can learn on the dirt that will translate into road racing to me seems like just getting an increased level of comfort with slip angle and getting used to that, being a little squirrely, reading different track conditions and how they change, also experimenting with different lines. Let's see what else is on here.
I think you're going to have better overall awareness of where your car is and where other people are. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways.
That one's actually huge because you're looking at, it's not everywhere. VIR, we don't scrape a wall, but there's other tracks where you could. And if you've never done it before, if you're not comfortable with that corner is going to be very difficult for you and potentially dangerous, right? So getting used to putting your car next to that really hard object might behoove you to do that. But then also the awareness you talked about with no mirrors on these cars, you have to have that feeling, that spatial awareness. Where's the guy in front of me exactly? Where's the guy beside me? The folks behind me? Where is everyone? And can I make this car get through this corner with where everybody is? It's a challenge, right? Especially when, thank God they added head and neck restraint requirements into circle track racing. I know for the longest time, like they were like the donut, the little foam donut is all you need. So when you're all strapped in for real and you're in real equipment, it's going to be harder for you to see, but you will gain a lot of awareness that way, I think.
I can't agree more.
So, I'm sure I missed some stuff, but was there anything else you wanted to add about circle track and how it translates to road racing?
No, the only other thing we didn't talk about that I think is comical at times is the visibility part of it. Not so much on asphalt, but on dirt, there's a lot of times, or there can be times you're driving through a lot of dust and you have mud on your visor. Ice racing for sure. We throw up so much ice chips and snow dust that you can get really used to having a rhythm, a feel of where the track is and where you are for that split second while you're blind. And, I've been at so many road course races where the driver's complaining because there's a dead fly on the windshield and I better wipe it off. And he's in grid yelling at me on the radio. And I go over there and I wipe it off and I'm laughing because I've used to having to take tear-offs off and hit the screen because it's covered in mud and all the other things that we've taken on. So that's the only other thing that we didn't touch on my list was the visibility, learning how to drive without being able to see everything that you would like to see.
Yeah. That's something I didn't think of, but I can think of many, many situations where on the road course, I don't get to see everything I want to see. Maybe there's a rotary engine in front of you and it's puking a little extra oil and it oils down your windshield, or the weather rolls in. Just as much as car control, visibility in the weather is hard, right? If you're endurance racing, visibility at night, it could be crystal clear. You could have the cleanest windshield at night and your visibility is still hampered, right? There's only so many lumens or candle watts or whatever you can throw down the track when you're endurance racing at night. So yeah, that's a big thing, is to be more comfortable with less visibility. That's a good one.
Yeah. Other than that, the throttle control, the brake control, that's all racing. But I think we covered all the basics. And again, can't say it enough. Seat time is always the best, no matter what it's in. And some guys need to not have, not put away their pride for a minute and just go drive that rusty, crappy Honda or Cavalier on the track and remember that you're passing everybody in the grandstands, and the slowest car on track is faster than every car sitting in the garage. And just have fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Hopefully some people will get the bug and get out there in some cheaper dirt equipment and learn some new stuff, because I think I really want to. So
all race cars matter.
even the ones with too much camber. Or the drifters. I saw a drifter today call their car a race car, and I was like, what are you racing against? Exactly. But
yeah, it's not my cup of tea, but I am blessed that when I'm sitting at this kitchen table, I can look out and I can see the flagpole for US Air. And all summer long, when I'm outside doing yard work, I can hear the drifters and the autocross guys. It just makes me smile. I appreciate all cars. I don't hate on any of their builds. It's not my cup of tea, but I enjoy going and checking them out once in a while and love their passion for their sport.
Absolutely. They for the stereotypes, they engineer some crazy things into those cars to make them sustain the abuse they put them through. And I work hard to keep tires under my car, and they work very hard to destroy tires. And it's a totally different philosophy. I don't understand it, but it's just different.
The more motorsports you expose yourself to as a car builder and owner, you find different manufacturers and you find different parts that will benefit you in your own motorsport and others that you would have never thought of doing. And I think that's one thing that has led to a lot of my success over the years was I've had experience in another field and I'm translating that knowledge to this track, and wow, it works. And now sometimes I go out and I'm horrible and I'm dead last, but there's times I've been really proud of some ingenuity and tricks that I've learned.
Yeah. Sweet. Thanks again for coming on the show. I'm sure we'll have another conversation in the future because you are constantly out having fun in the motorsports world. So
thank you, sir.
Until next time, keep working on yourself, keep working on the car, and let's get faster.